Hey, welcome back, PetaPixel viewers. It is Chris Niccolls here, coming to you from Apple Park in beautiful Cupertino. Yes, we did just see the Apple Keynote launch event, and we have seen the new iPhone 16, and specifically the Pro series. That's what we're really excited about. Let's get to it. So yes, it was a great event. We may have had a few obstacles, well, at least Jordan did, getting to the actual Steve Jobs Theater, but as usual, a very cool event. We had some interesting reactions, and of course we got to see the new iPhone 16 and 16 Pro. And so what I want to do now today is talk about the things that are very interesting to us about the iPhone 16 Pro, and we are going to focus just on the Pro models because as photographers, as creatives, we think that's the most important model to go for, and you definitely want to stay tuned because we're going to have a more in-depth review of the iPhone 16 Pro series for photography and videography. So I want to talk about the cameras on the phones first, and we actually have a very similar situation to what Google just did a couple months ago, where we now have both a Pro and a Pro Max model, much like the Google Pro and Pro XL, and what we now have is the exact same cameras on both models. So what you're really deciding now is just, do you want the larger screen, the larger physical size of the phone, or the smaller phone? Regardless, you're now getting the same camera suite. So let's start off with the main camera first, and this is actually very interesting because we thought it was just going to be the exact same camera as the iPhone 15 because it's a 48 megapixel quad pixel sensor, f1.78 aperture, but the iPhone 16 Pro has now a main camera that reads out twice as fast as what we've seen before, and that has huge ramifications when it comes to things like video frame rates, and very possibly also interests us in that it can maybe take even more shots in the same amount of time as before and get better image quality by stacking all those images together. Another big upgrade now is the ultra-wide camera. This is moving up in a big way to a 48 megapixel sensor, f2.2 aperture, and it does have autofocus, and this is also going to unlock some very detail-rich macro capabilities. Lastly, we have the exact same 5x telephoto camera that we saw on the iPhone 15 Pro Max. This is now on both the Pro and the Pro Max models of the iPhone 16. I mean, this is interesting because this basically means that the iPhone Pro gets all three new cameras this year. We don't have any of the same hardware from last year, but some people would be disappointed to see the 3x optical lens go because if you really like portraits, you might find that a more suitable focal length. So I do also want to touch on battery life here really quickly. Battery life capacity has been improved on both the Pro and the Pro Max. We're going to get roughly 4 hours extra video playback time on both phones. And I've always liked the iPhone's battery life. That's been great. The USB-C charging, though, it's not that fast. It's the same as last year. We're not seeing an improvement, so that's too bad. Where we are seeing a boost is if you use the wireless MagSafe charger. That is getting close to the wired charging speeds. Now, Apple did make a big deal about the screens not being larger and, thinner borders. The borders get thinner and thinner and thinner. They're going to be non-existent soon. And although the screens are very nice to use and they do go up to the 120 hertz maximum, Pro Motion kind of refresh rates, but they're not that bright. I mean, there's the same max peak brightness we saw last year, 2000 nits. So that's their peak brightness, but it's not peak in the industry anymore. Now, as a photographer, one of the most interesting upgrades I want to talk about is this new camera control button. So very cool. First off, this gives you true haptic feedback, not only when you're using it, but also when you press down to take a shot, you actually get a mechanical click feel, very much like a proper camera. That is cool, but it goes well beyond that. I mean, minimal shutter lag when you're taking photos, so your timing's a little bit faster. As well, you can do a thing where you double press on this, and it does take a bit of practice. We got some hands-on time, but when it works really well. It brings up a sub menu, and I can then choose things like my depth of field, or I can choose things like my zoom range, or what lens I want to use, or exposure changes, white balance changes, creative picture styles, and you can actually slide back and forth on this button as well to adjust all your settings. It's very nice. It also frees up now the action button. I always had the action button customized to bring up my camera app, but now I can go back to using it for many other things. Another interesting feature for photographers is the new creative picture styles that they have here. It's nice, they compartmentalize some of them more for just undertones, but still maintaining good skin tones, which is really cool, or your more classic surreal ones, your black and white modes, your vibrance, your, ethereal modes, all this kind of stuff. But they're very easy to select either through the camera control button or afterwards in photos. And what's cool about them is that first off, I can customize them. I can change how vivid they are, how much effect, the opacity, as well I can have it remember what I did last time so that it always uses that setting, and I can always reverse that or change it to something else afterwards.
All right, Jordan here to talk about my initial impressions on the iPhone 16 Pro. And obviously the big headline feature on this is we now have the ability to record 4K 120, which is really impressive. And not only 4K 120, but you can capture it in HDR, which means this sensor is definitely reading out incredibly fast. But there are still some limitations to be aware of with that. First of all, this is only going to work on the main camera. Now, you can do a digital crop to 2 or 3 times, but that's obviously going to degrade your image quality quite a bit. The other thing to remember, this is compatible with Apple's log, but in order to access that, just like shooting 4K 60, you're going to have to use an external hard drive hooked into the USB-C port. Now, if you capture 4K 120 footage, what's nice is in playback, you can choose the playback speed of that, real time, or slow it all the way down to 1/5 speed. Now, in playback, you're also going to find another very interesting option. The iPhone's capable of recording spatial audio, but you can also choose how it's distributed in post. So if you only want it to use the audio from what's in front of the phone, you can attempt to isolate it that way. There's also a cinematic mode that's really cool, where it'll put all of the speaking voices in the center channel and move all the ambient sound to the surrounds, just like what you see in a proper film. Now, these are actually really useful new tools I could totally see myself using, but what I was begging Apple for is in the native app, or even in Final Cut Camera, I really wanted to see the ability to record Apple log in a more compressed format than the ProRes HQ they're currently using that just uses a ton of storage, and if you're shooting 4K 60 and now 4K 120, requires you to use an external hard drive in order to record that. Now, yes, absolutely, you can use other apps, something like Blackmagic's camera app, which is wonderful, but unfortunately, if you use that, you're not going to get access to the audio mixing tool that I did find really, really cool. So this is still a bit of an oversight. I'd love to see them fix in software.
Now, of course, all the smartphone companies have been making really big pushes lately with AI-based support, especially turning your smartphone into a personal assistant. And of course, the iPhone 16 is no different. I'm excited to play with those features, but again, that goes beyond the scope of what we do for photography. But there are some nice AI-based tools like being able to find all of your photos that are related to a particular person or particular topic easily. I mean, that's all good stuff. Being able to take photos of things and then get information and data about that subject to take photos of. But this is all stuff that we've seen from the other manufacturers as well. And frankly, the AI tools that we're talking about and learning about today aren't going to be available on the phone at release. As far as generative AI goes for actual photography, it's basically limited to things like emojis or making custom stickers, or of course an eraser tool to get rid of unwanted things in your photograph. But Apple isn't going any further with their Apple Intelligence, at least not at this point, and that puts them well behind what we're seeing from manufacturers like Google. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I mean, another interesting year from Apple here on their products. And of course, we do have a full review coming out very shortly. As well, we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff on the podcast as well. So to get more in-depth information, definitely check those out. You can watch the PetaPixel podcast on all your favorite podcasting apps or right here on this exact same YouTube channel. And definitely also check out store.petapixel.com for all the merch that we have available as well. But we've got a lot of questions going forward on this phone. I can't wait to play with it more and answer those for you and get that full review out. So stay tuned. There'll be more from us on PetaPixel.